Yeah, I think it's a great idea.
I mean, I do too. I mean, I'm sure you're spending money.
I would like to welcome everyone today to our meeting here. Portsmouth Redevelopment Housing Authority Board of Commissioner meetings are held on the third Thursday of each month at 5 p.m. All meetings are conducted at PRHA's main office, 3116 South Street, Portsmouth, Virginia, 23707, unless otherwise noted. All members of the public are welcome. Mr. Bland?
Commissioner Jiggets,
Present.
Commissioner Lundy,
Present.
Commissioner Morgan,
Here.
Commissioner Roberts,
Here.
Commissioner Washington,
Present.
Vice Chair Chapman,
Present.
Chair Smith.
Present. All righty. We had a roll call. We did that and we called to order. Approval of minutes on February 21st, 2019 minute meeting. Anyone ready?
Unreadiness. Let me get my notes out.
Make a motion, we approve the minutes as submitted.
Second. It's been motion.
I passed by with some unreadiness.
You did. You did.
What's up with that?
Robert's rules, you posed unreadiness, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, you have to abide by that, commissioners.
I thought so. I
Well,
mean,
we all got them a week ago, all right?
no, I didn't. I didn't
They
get
were
ones a
mailed-
week
they were
ago.
mailed to us, emailed to us.
Okay.
In the packet in front of us, three occasions we've had them. I got mine, 4 or 5 days ago. But we'll wait.
To say that is to say what?
Well, whatever you want to do to look at them, I guess.
Where does it go?
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to be clear.
Nothing wrong with that.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Okay. Let's see. There was a couple of questions. I didn't want to wait till the commissioner's comments. I think I'm not clear on what HUD asked us to spend down our reserves. What I don't remember exactly what that
Commissioner, what
was
page you
about.
on? What are you referring to?
Page 2. Good. You got the pages number 2.
Wasn't that with regard to the shutdown, government shutdown, and the fact that funds weren't coming from HUD? And so that's why we had to rely on our reserves if the rents were not forthcoming because the government was not back.
Well, the main
Working.
thing was we spent our reserves too on the Section 8 side because when we had too much reserve, HUD sent us less money and you want housing authority to spend down some of that reserve. That was basically what it was.
Oh, well, that was,
Yeah.
Okay.
It was Section 8 reserves we had to spend down.
So we just moved the $1 million to do what?
No, it wasn't $1 million. See, we get roughly, every month from HUD, we get our HAP payment, which is, and we get all of it, is a little more than $1 million. And sometimes HUD will not send us that total amount if our reserves are too high, and then we have to take the money out of the reserve to make up the difference, because HUD said you only have X number of dollars in your reserve based on the size of your house and for the number of units that you have. So some months we get 100%, some months we may get less, so then we use the reserves, but we're still paying our landlords as required.
Okay. I just didn't remember exactly how we were handling that money. And I just want us all to be clear on that. So we moved the money because HUD told us we had too much money, and we don't want to keep a large reserve there.
Well, yeah, on the Section 8 side, HUD wanted that you keep X number of dollars in there.
There's no moving of the money.
No moving.
So like typically HUD direct deposits into our bank accounts like over $1 million, sometimes it's 1.1 million every month. But some months, like a couple times, they only send us like 900 and some thousand. So then what it does is there's a calculation that we have to do, and they'll do a reconciliation. So they're just basically saying that we should be sending you this, but now we're only sending you this, so that couple $100,000 is going to come off their HUD held reserves because they're holding the money.
Okay, we're not
And then,
holding.
no, we're not holding the money. HUD is holding the money.
Okay. So when we switch it around, we just lower our what?
We're not
we
even-
still pay the landlord.
Yes. Mhm.
And some
Whatever
months our
they're-
expenses is not as high as it is the other, because you could have tenants that have moved out, they're in transition between units, or maybe their unit is on abatement, but then the next month you're gonna spend it and then some, so then you're going back and you're pulling some of your reserves. So HUD likes for you to utilize your reserves, that they have HUD held reserves. So
Okay.
you're using that for your regular monthly expenses to fund your Section 8 landlords.
Okay. Great. And then on page 4, this is our new auditor that we're going to be using for our books. The LL Commission clarified that he spoke with Mr. Bland, and he was comfortable that there was no conflict. The Sterling stated that the current auditor has reached out to the Knicks C and for help on some housing authority issues. Is that all resolved, Mr. Bland?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And then the other thing I had. Okay. Oh, and the other question I had was about the, on page 6. We have allocated $500,000 for air conditioning units. Is that for
Paragraph.
page 6?
What paragraph?
A second paragraph in the big paragraph. We were talking about the air conditioning unit, and I stated we were spending, it has been approved for $500,000 for units over in the Swanson home, 60 units, I think it was the total. And I stated that we're spending about $3,300 per unit to $500. So I recalculated my figures, and 60 units would be $198,000, and if we added another $60,000 to it, it would be about $270,000. I used that $3,300 based on the $500,000. So I'm just wondering how those numbers reconcile those numbers for me.
It was 150 units.
It was 150.
150 units.
Did you?
60 is what we have already replaced because of the flood.
Okay. Excellent answer. Thank you, because I was really nervous about my calculations. I knew I did 33. So it's a total of 150 units.
Remaining, because it's 210 units total in that development.
Okay. Thank you. All right. And on page 7, Mrs. Jiggins spoke about the safety over in the facility, and I would just like, second paragraph, Mr. Bland asked, I would just like to add to that conversation, with the theft of the TVs, it's not just the TVs we're concerned about, but it's it's property and the people's safety. If people can walk into our facilities and take TVs, they can also harm our people. So I'd just like to just add that comment to what Ms. Jiggins has said. And I think that's all.
Well, I still have unread, and it's, you can,
Oh, okay.
I mean, no, because I have something.
Okay. I think that's pretty much all that I needed to state.
Okay.
Can I ask you one question, Commissioner Jiggins? Is
Sure.
this something we need to change, or is it a comment?
It's something we need to change, okay? And it's just an error in the word that was used. I'm on page 2, the last sentence in the third paragraph. It reads, Vice Chair Chapman stated that the financials would be, the word we got here is filed. It should be filed, which is one L, F-I-L-E-D, filed with the Secretary Treasurer for audit. Just give me 1 second, because I think there was one other thing. Okay. I think that's all. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, yes. Chair, we need a motion to approve of minutes with the edit.
I make a motion that the minutes be approved as
With the corrections.
stated corrections. And
I
thank you.
second.
And I thank you for your clarifications.
Mr. Bland?
Roll call. Commissioner Jiggets,
Yes.
Commissioner London,
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan,
Yes.
Commissioner Roberts,
Yes.
Commissioner Washington,
Yes.
Vice Chair Chapman,
Yes.
Chair Smith.
Yes. No, abstain. I wasn't here, so.
Okay.
Oh, I should have said.
Next item we got here. Old business, Mr. Bland.
Nothing at this moment.
Not this minute. Finance. Nothing at this moment. Procurement. Mr. Lord.
Nothing at this moment.
How cheerful.
Oh, that didn't work, huh? Well, since I have to talk. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
This procurement, session is a lot shorter than last time, praise God. We have two, procurement actions that I'm here to, get commissioner approval for, to go under contract. The first one is, the authorization to do flooring replacement at Phoebus Square. We have, we issued an invitation for bid at Phoebus Square for, for flooring replacement on January the 10th. We want to replace the carpet in the common areas, which includes the hallways in both of the buildings and the resident lounge. We're going to replace it with long-lasting, low-maintenance, luxury vinyl planks, LVP, because their carpet, which was installed in 2010, is in horrible condition right now, and it's been cleaned, but there's stains in there that just can't come out. So it would be, we feel that the LVP product is a much better product for that type of environment, and it will it'll make the residents very happy because that's one of their major concerns. We posted our solicitation on EVA on our website, into the pilot, and we reached over 3,300 vendors through the use of these forms. We had 7 vendors that actually responded. We had more that came out to our walkthrough and pre-bid on February, and we had the bids due February 13th at 3 o'clock. And the most responsive proposal was Continental Flooring. They were the low bid. That's the one thing about an IFB, invitation for bid, is low bid. Who had the lowest price? That was a responsive bidder. And so their price was actually below, way below the cost estimate, because we had some other people come out and give us some quotes on it before we actually did our bid. And that was, so their quote was, their bid was way below that. The thing of it with Continental is a fairly large firm that works with governmental entities. They have federal contract, they're on the GSA contract, and they work with several state and local. That's their area of expertise. That's who they work with, governmental entities, institutions like schools and colleges, hospitals. So we're asking the Commissioner's approval for us to enter into a contract with Continental Flooring for the replacement of the floors at Phoebus.
Okay, discussion, please. And I know you explained it to me at the last meeting, but it is a great concern to me when we have to go out of state for a bid. And honestly, this 99,000 bid, and then when you look at the next bid, 117,000, that's very suspicious to me. Does that raise any red flags that this Continental, being out of state, was able to come in so low? I know you just said because they do a lot of business with the government, but is there not any legal way that we can give priority in some shape, form, or fashion with our local vendors when it comes to contracts like this. I'm just very concerned about this.
No,
No.
no. Code is very explicit. There is no local preference.
And there's case law, so they have been sued because we can't have set-asides. So you can do
HUD was
aspiration.
sued?
No, it was a major case, major case here in Virginia, where they tried to do set-asides. I think it was an airport or something. I have to find the case. But it was a governmental entity, and based on that case, in Virginia, you can't do any set-aside, so you have to follow the procurement rules.
Okay. Well, I will forever then be voting opposed to it because it's not fair, it's not right, and it's not ethical. It really is not. And I know it's not.
But I think
But we have
it
to
is
follow
very
the
fair. It's
I hear you.
It's low bid, and we're using public funds. We're using taxpayer dollars,
Right.
and
Yes, we are.
being good stewards of the federal funds. Why would we spend an additional $18,000 of taxpayer money just because the business is here locally?
Because it creates jobs.
But it's
here
federal.
locally.
They're federal dollars.
This isn't local
Yeah,
funds.
but, and I hear you.
This federal funds come from people all over the nation. They
And
don't
I
come
hear
just from
you.
Portsmouth.
I hear you, and I still stand firm that HUD needs to be held accountable because here we have local businesses bidding on this contract, and because it's like a David and Goliath,
It is. But it's not wrong.
and that is, for me, ethically, it's wrong because there is no balance in the way the process is working. It's not a indictment against you. I've said that before. You do excellent work, but it bothers me. It bothers me on behalf of local businesses in our area. It's a great concern to me. So, beyond that, continue.
Before I make the motion,
Yes, sir.
I don't disagree with the sentiment, but it's HUD, it is what it is. I know the answer, but I gotta ask, that includes installation, right? Good, bless it.
They are actually on
Commissioner.
many cooperative procurement contracts. And as a matter of fact, I actually contacted them to ensure
I know,
that they had
Crazy.
complete understanding of the requirements. And they were here. They had their representative here when we did our walkthrough. So they heard the same thing that everyone else heard, and they actually did their measurements. I was quite amazed. I was thinking people were going to come with their little walk and tape measures, but now everything's digitized, and they have these lasers that they point, and they all do, and their measurements are in line with everyone else's measurements. So
Yeah, don't take as long either.
yeah,
Yeah,
I saw some hands down here.
I went out to Phoebus this afternoon to talk to the team out there. They're very excited about what you're doing. A couple of the residents I talked to very excited that, one, they're cleaning up that carpet, and then follow on, I would encourage us, as we have major carpet replacements like this, to go to the material that you're using, because obviously it'll wear longer and has a good look. So I applaud what y'all are doing, and again, obviously you've done well for the tenants out there and done well for the team out there, so thank you.
Well, a question on
Hold on one
your
second.
statement then.
Hold on
I'm
one
sorry,
second.
go ahead.
And
Vice
I
Chair.
also, I'm concurring with Bruce as well too, because not only, we have to consider the fact that because it's a senior citizens building as well, it's a tripping hazard. When that carpet, it's a safety issue. When that carpet is torn up, it's not repaired, and then we're looking at people that may be looking to sue us if we're not making sure that we replace it as needed, you know. I don't know what the number of years it is that we have to replace those carpets. How often is
like
it
10.
It's
just?
been 10 years.
It's been,
10
right,
years.
I
yeah.
thought so.
2009, 2010, the
Correct.
Phoebus was built.
Right, okay. So, yeah, I'm all for it.
Well, let me just be
Well,
clear.
Hold on one second. Commissioner
Yeah.
Wash.
I totally understand this, and I appreciate your sentiments, and that could be another conversation, but we are guided by the federal procurement procedures. And there may be some instances where, and I don't know of any right off the top of my head, where we we can speak up on behalf of local businesses in our area. What I know they do is they take these projects, but then they hire locally to get them completed sometimes. So that's pretty much all that we do.
Is that going to happen with this contract?
I have no idea.
No
You don't
control
even
on it.
know?
No. The thing is, as far as local is concerned, about 80% of our procurement actions are what we call
Excuse me.
micro
Excuse me.
procurements.
We'll wait till they finish.
About 80% of our procurement actions are micro procurements. And with micro procurements, that means they're under what HUD calls our micro procurement threshold, which is $3,000. And for those procurement actions, we don't even have to go out for competition. We can pick anyone. I always advise the staff, just like you shop around in your own house, you may want to call 2 people instead of just one. Because you never I don't buy for myself and just to get one quote. But I said, but that's all they have to do. And so that is a way that we use
That's what I was
many
thinking
local
about.
vendors. And that's most of our procurement actions.
Okay.
And then we have, because the number of procurement actions that actually come here, because it's anything over 50,000. Most of our procurement actions fall way below that 50,000 threshold. So, and they get to do, so a lot of our procurement staff, we do purchase orders for. And many of the purchase orders are for companies that are right around in this area, very local.
Well, that's good. And I just want to be clear, no opposition to the carpet being replaced. You know, obviously, I think Vice Chair Chapman spoke to that about the safety, of course, and I'm all for safety, all for safety. But I would be remiss if I didn't speak on behalf of the business community and how the perception is as it pertains to HUD and their requirements. So thank you.
Very good.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. I know you have another item. Chair,
Yeah.
you need a motion.
Yes, sir.
Anything else?
Did you get a second on this one?
I didn't get a
Second.
Okay.
Okay. Commissioner Jiggets,
No.
Commissioner London,
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan,
Yes.
Commissioner Roberts,
Yes.
Commissioner Washington,
Yes.
Vice Chair Chapman,
Yes.
Chair Smith.
Yes.
Wait, the next item I
You know
have,
what I didn't get to do? I didn't get to read the resolution.
Couldn't vote it.
All right. I got to read it first, Mr. Blaine. We got to do that. All right. Resolution 2019-11. Resolution authorizing the execution of a contract for Fever Square flooring replacement between Portsmouth Redevelopment Housing Authority and Continental Flooring Company. Chairs in need of a motion.
It's done.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
So moved and properly second. Mr. Blaine.
Okay. Commissioner Jiggets,
No.
Commissioner London,
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan,
Yes.
Commissioner Roberts,
Yes.
Commissioner Washington,
Yes.
Vice Chair Chapman,
Yes.
Chair Smith.
Yes. 361. All right, item number 2. Mr. Lewis, you got the floor again.
we don't read.
Read
Oh.
the resolution.
Said you wanted to read
Cindy
it.
Herrera, is that what the
Got you. It's a resolution 2019-12. Resolution authorizing the execution of the contract for financial advisory services between Portsmouth Redevelopment Housing Authority and Cindy Herrera. Did I pronounce that right? And Associates LLC.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
The authority went out for a request for proposal for financial advisory services. So we need a firm to help us with our research and providing financing plans and for the authority for all our different projects, including our low-income housing tax credits, new markets tax credit funding application, moving to work, a prospective moving to work application. We don't currently have a firm under contract that provides these types of services. We did previously, but that contract expired. So we're interested in procuring a firm to assist us with these things as we continue to look at how to best position our portfolio.
Excellent.
We issued an RFP in January 3rd, right after we came back in the new year. And we advertised in the ballot and even on our website. And over 1,600 firms did get notified about it. We had 4 firms that responded. The evaluation committee was made up of our CFO, the Director of Development, Deputy Director, and Executive Director. and based on the scoring, we would like to enter into a contract with Cindy Herrera and Associates. She has definitely has a lot of experience working with housing authorities, doing the type of work that we need her to do, and so we recommend that the board approve this contract. She was the highest scorer, as an aside, both on price and technically.
Question, okay. Go ahead.
Just a question, and just for kind of clarification purposes. You said we had a firm before. Was that the communities group?
The firm we had before was Chesapeake Community Advisors. It was a group by Dave Prout. They helped us with like Seaboard and with Hamilton and all those other projects.
That was really about the basis of kind of the question was I didn't really follow exactly what we were hiring them for. Just from understanding that they talk about the various avenues of financing. So you're talking about more from a how do we evaluate our existing portfolio, not necessarily or maybe necessarily new projects.
Yes, they can do any. That's why any type of services that could help position the authority. As a matter for instance, they help us with when we do a tax credit application. They do the application. They also look for other funding sources because there's gap funding. We need to have to make the projects work. So they may do a bond application, or they may do some other type of HUD funding application, or do Federal Home Loan Bank. They look for other avenues to help fill the gap so that we don't have a lot of debt on the projects.
Did we have anybody that advised us when we were doing Dale 1 and 2?
With Dale 1 and 2, we had a master developer agreement with the Hunt company that was later took over by Penrose, and then the communities group. They entered into a joint application for that project, and so the communities group specialty is the financial, that part piece, and Hunt was the construction.
Question.
Any other commissioners?
Yes, on this Cindy Herrera, can you call this a transmittal sheet? What is this called?
It's just an agenda item.
Agenda item. I'm curious why you didn't have one for this Cindy Herrera, because I would have wanted to see the top 4 scores that came
She
in.
sent it out. She never
I
sent
didn't
it out?
receive that yet.
Oh, okay.
I didn't
Yeah,
know.
the evaluation committee was
No.
just, they
It
were.
came a day later. I
It
didn't
did,
get
it came
that.
a day.
Okay, I didn't
So
get
you
mine
never
at all.
see- Oh,
No.
yeah, we do have
Didn't come with
that.
the packet then. So you
It
have
came
an
with the
extra
printed
one?
minutes that I received.
Well, the other thing that
Commissioner?
the other thing I was going to add to this is conversation is when we select someone to represent and we agree to it as we make our decision, can we have, in addition to your comments, a biography or a story about the company
Exactly.
so that we'll know who we are dealing with as well? We trust you. You are always excellent. But that would be helpful to have something about the company in front of us,
Exactly.
in addition to your recommendation. And add it to the sheet.
Vice Chair,
Well, I think they give us information on each of the recommendations. They normally give us a background of information. I didn't receive that, so I didn't have time, because I was like Commissioner Jiggett, I wanted to look and
Right.
see a little bit more about who the
Who it
recommendation, correct. What section was that?
In the packet they had us on our desk.
Yeah.
when we came in.
Oh, I didn't.
It was probably just an oversight with them sending them out, it's no problem.
Yeah, but,
Okay.
yeah, didn't have it in my package.
Okay, yeah.
And certainly, could you just elaborate a little bit more on her background? Is it a she or he, Cindy? Who
Cindy
is it?
Herrera is
Yes,
a
woman-owned.
she. She is it is a woman-owned firm. She's also a minority owned firm. She has
Located.
WM. She's out of Johns Island, South Carolina. It's on the form that some of you received. She's actually been doing. She's provided services. She's provided these type of services for some of the larger housing authorities in the country, such as San Francisco.
That's what I would be wanting to, when you say done for others, that's a real plus in my
We
mind.
always, there's usually a section on these that says previous experience by the firm, and it tells you who they
Okay, here it is.
worked with in the
Okay,
past.
great.
Yeah, we include that information.
Okay.
And because we always request it, and then we use that when we check references. We always contact the people. And we like to see when they have previous housing authority experience. That's what they
Yeah, he
get more.
showed it to me.
always
He
a
did
plus.
it in our, he did it
It's always
in
a
our
plus.
package, you know.
Commissioners, any more comments?
I'd move approval of the resolution.
Second, you know what I'm saying?
This is important.
Already read it already. I gotta read it
You
again.
gotta do it again.
Resolution 2019-12, resolution authorizing execution of the contract for financial advisory service between Portsmouth Redevelopment Housing Authority and Cindy Herrera and Associates LLC.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second.
Unreadiness. My unreadiness is this, for the contract, it says up to 100,000. Could you just elaborate on that? Because what will make this particular company not push the envelope to go for the actual 100,000? If you can just elaborate on that, please.
Because we are the ones that assign them projects that we want them to work on.
Okay.
So that's why they can't exceed what their maximum is, and we do it up to, because we don't know what, depending on what we need done, we can't set it at a certain amount. But they always give us a proposal. They gave us, in their pricing, we asked them hourly rates for different people, and then we asked them to provide us with an estimate of what it would cost to do something that we expect to use them for. So what would you charge us for a 4% application? What would you charge us for a 9% application? What would you charge us for a RAD project to get us up to closing? That way, so they have to abide by whatever the numbers are, the pricing that they put in their proposal. They can't come back and say, oh, we're going to charge you X number of dollars. We're like, no, you said it will be this price in your proposal.
And so it will be proactive work. It'll be the housing authority instructing this company on what performance-based projects they want them to do. Is that correct?
Yes, we assign them. We give them what we do is we issue what is called task orders, and we'll issue them a task order asking them to do a 4% application for Lexington Place, or 9% tax credit application for a project we want to do, or we may issue them a task order to explore us purchasing an existing project and converting it to project-based voucher. And see, they'll look at the financial ramifications of that for the authority.
Okay. Well, thank you for the further clarification. I appreciate it.
Any other questions?
The motion is back on the floor.
Yeah.
Is there a motion?
Yeah, I think we have a
Second.
second.
Okay. Commissioner Jiggets?
Yes.
Commissioner London?
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan?
Yes.
Commissioner Roberts?
Yes.
Commissioner Washington?
Yes.
Vice Chair Chapman?
Yes.
Chair Smith?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next item, housing, nothing. All right, next item 7, item number 7, development. Nothing. Number 8, human resources. And finally, number 9, reports. Mr. Barnes.
Commissioner, you got a copy of the activity report that was in your package. Any questions from that?
Anything you should be aware of that changed? I didn't go through that as the.
What's that?
We had a couple, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Vice Chair.
As far as the waiting list for Dale, that closed on February 22, do we have any update as to how many applicants people applied
It's
for?
approximately about 1,022. And that was only for the 2 and 3 bedroom homes.
Oh, wow.
So you have a 1 and 2 and a 2 and 3.
We have a Dale 1 and 2 wait list consisting of a 1 through 4 bedrooms. But we had an ample amount of applicants for the 1 bedroom. So we didn't need to open a wait list for the 1 bedrooms, just the 2 and 3 bedrooms.
And those are just Portsmouth folks, or are they just anybody that's eligible in the area?
Anyone.
So we just, if we saw something in this part, we ask the questions, or are you going through page by page?
You can just ask.
Just ask the question?
Right.
Okay. I do have a question. I have a couple of questions. On page 4, under the senior and disability services, where it talks about volunteers, 8 volunteers assisted with the process. I thought that was very commendable. Where do you draw your volunteers from? Are they residents, or you get them from other organizations, or?
Let me see which.
What paragraph are you?
Page 4, under senior,
Oh, see,
Family
it's
self-sufficiency.
mostly,
under senior and disability services, page 4.
most of the volunteers are residents that actually live in Peter Square. Sometimes we may have a community partner that'll come in. She'll have someone from, there's a group called the Triad here that includes, includes the sheriff and police department. So sometimes someone from there from the Triad will come and help them with the food distribution. But most times it's the residents that volunteer to help out.
Okay, I didn't know if there were opportunities for the commissioners to volunteer in some aspects like that, or if we as commissioners have done that before.
No, they have attended though the different activities and events that are held by our staff in the Family Self-Sufficiency Program.
Okay, page 6. I thought that was commendable under the youth services about the scholarship banquet that's going to be held at Elizabeth Manor Golf and Country Club and on Friday, May the 24th. And I was wondering, were the commissioners going to be in attendance for that event? Do they normally
You
attend?
will get an invite, yes.
Okay, I think that is commendable. One other question, and I don't know how you're able to answer this one. It's on page 8. In terms of a couple of applicants, I'm on under personnel. On page 8, under current position vacancies. You with me?
Oh,
Mayor?
that's not me.
Go ahead.
Oh, who is that? Who is that? Okay. Well, first of all, I'm a proponent of second chances type situations, and I was just wondering, in cases where the background checks come back unsatisfactory, is there a pathway to help those applicants maybe be able to apply in the future?
Yes.
And was it, without being specific, was there a way to, you know, I guess with the unsatisfactory aspect, when they did the background check, was it, you know, was it something that, I'm trying to understand you all's thinking on this for applicants that apply and the background check doesn't come up, and now I'm going to assume it doesn't come up pristine clean. Is that what you're looking for, only pristine clean?
No, we look at a couple of them, like most housing authority.
Uh-huh.
If the person is a sex offender, they're not going to get hard by the housing authority.
No, I understand that.
And sometimes that's the situation, because we can't house anybody who's on the sex register for housing, so we can't have a different standard for employees, because we are dealing with females and children, and we have that. Also, depending on the nature of the crime, also we have to look at that. If it's misdemeanor, something like that, then different, but, so we are held to a very high standard being a public agency, a very high standard.
Okay, which I, you know, would expect, but for clarification purposes, I think you have answered my question, because it did, you know, jump out as a red flag, because certainly we want to also be able to house, be able to hire as much as possible from our resident community. So thank you for that information.
Do you have a barrier list that they could refer to? Because in my line of employment, we also can't hire people to work with persons with intellectual disabilities, but we have a barrier list, and maybe that would probably be helpful for you to know which barriers are restricted from allowing people employment.
And we can provide that.
Yes. Excellent.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Commissioner Londa?
The maintenance mechanics for Dale, Hamilton, and what was the other one? Seaboard Square. I know we took some folks off the payroll. Are we, and also in-house, are we encouraging folks in-house to apply for these jobs, or are they all coming, or is it outside we're looking for?
When we open up employment opportunities, we encourage our residents in-house as well as within the community as a whole.
No, but I'm talking about on the staff. On
Yeah,
the staff.
correct,
We
yes.
give them,
Yes.
we try and take care of
We
them.
offer that
Good,
to them first
good,
initially,
good.
and then it's sent out to the public.
Good,
That's
good,
good to know.
good.
Because I
Thank
want
you,
to say, is it not posted, I think, on the
It
website?
is posted on
Because
the
they have a
website.
certain deadline that they have to get their application in,
Correct.
as opposed to.
So it's restricted to internal, and then go external. Okay, good,
Correct.
thank you very much.
Anything else?
Well, no. I do want to say this because I did take the opportunity to drive through some of the communities that we serve, and was very impressed. Obviously, I've been impressed visually, but then to actually drive in. But Mr. Bland, and this question is for you.
Okay.
What is the schedule, and I'm going to assume that for our communities, we would be responsible for paying for resurfacing of the pavement, the streets, is that correct? Or is that something that the city provides that service?
I'm going to let Mike give you
It really varies from site to site, depends on if roads are publicly dedicated or if they're privately owned. Those sites that we own streets on, we would have to include that in our plans.
What is it, a status for Seaboard Square? I'm curious.
I don't know.
They're public. They're public.
They're public streets. So therefore, do you at some point have to out to the city and say it's time for the streets to be repaired?
If it's public right away.
Okay, and the reason I asked because I did notice a number of streets had a lot of oil stains on it, and you get how that happens because the cars and everything. But I was also thinking maybe for the future of repaving, if they could use the darker type of street pavement than what they have, then that would not jump out at you as the oil.
Well, just to clarify that too, when we're talking about public right of ways, and oil stains, your oil stains are usually going to be in your parking spaces, and those are not part of the right of way. Those would be separate. Those would be ours.
Would be ours.
The parking
Okay.
spaces are going to be ours. That's going to be outside the right of way.
Yes, and just to add to the larger piece, I was going to bring it up later, but you just jumped into it. That would be part of our cooperative agreement, a contract with the city, because it spoke to some of those concerns that she is raising about repairs of the streets and who's responsible for what. So this is a timely kind of piece, because on page 9 in our minutes, and we're going to have this conversation. This is proposed to be a part of our joint meeting on the agenda. And I think at this point in time, what we're doing is a timely conversation for that, as well as to determine how do we revise, if anything needs to be revised. I'm sorry, in a cooperative agreement. It's a very timely conversation, because it was originally 1941 when it was. Yeah. So, yeah.
And that would extend to Seaboard Square because it was formerly Jeffrey Wilson. Is that what that is?
All of them, all the housing subdivisions, all of them. So we really need to have that conversation.
No question. And that leads me into the next question. I'm still on Seaboard Square. And this is because of a personal experience that I had with my street in the city, Vice Mayor. I can't get street sweeping because I don't have street curbs, and the equipment is only for streets that have curbing.
Wow, excuse me a second. Remember that we're talking housing authority business, you're going a little
Well, I'm going, no, not, because I'm getting ready to bring you back home to church. So my question is, who provides street sweeping out at Seaboard Square? Is that, and has the city been doing
Yes,
that?
it
Doing
has.
that? That's the only reason, because I wanted to make sure, because it's important, because those are nice projects. And the aesthetics, if we do all that we can do for the aesthetics, the project will last a long time.
Of course.
So that's why I started with that, and I wanted to make sure. I don't want to assume anything in terms of with something, that some people might take for granted about street sweeping, but it's important. So you're saying that the city of Portsmouth does provide street sweeping for Seaboard Square and Hamilton Place, I'm going to assume, and the rest of them too.
Not Hamilton.
Hamilton.
Hamilton is not public streets.
Okay, so does the Housing Authority perform street sweeping at Hamilton Place?
We take care of the streets in Hamilton because it's our responsibility because they belong to the housing authority.
And have you done street sweeping?
We do.
It's a tongue tied, but
I'm not saying we've done street sweeping, but we do take care of the sweepers for making sure they're clean and stuff like that. So we police the streets, stuff like that. Broom sweep, but street sweeper no.
And see, Mr. Chair.
they're not going to let us sit beside each other.
Oh, no, this is a good conversation. This is why that cooperative agreement is vital, because at least my interpretation of some of the things that are in that cooperative agreement is different from what you're telling me. From the original agreement says that a city cooperates with PRHA in the maintenance of our streets and sewer systems, and let me not just go through the list, but it has, in addition to putting a financial limitation on what we pay for those services to the city. We've had big conversations about cost in moving trash in our PRHA subdivisions, and we're trying to cooperate with the city to participate in that. That's why this conversation is so valuable. With the city council, that cooperative agreement is a contract that was originally signed by the city and PRJ. So I want to emphasize that. So your questions are right on target. And when we talk about the nature of our city, it's vital that we treat blight and wherever it is and try to address it as quickly as possible. It only depreciates the city. And we want our city to be and continue to be first class in everything that we do. We are building to continue in the direction that it has been. We're moving into the future. And that's essential. Okay, that's all I have.
Okay.
Just adding.
No, I mean, I appreciate
Mr. Blaine?
I'm gonna do some handouts.
More?
I'm gonna just do some handouts at this moment and go through some of them with you, so that because there's been some questions that came up into some reference to some items. And one was, I'll pass this down, then I'll get to it.
One more this way.
I always end up not having one because I pass mine on.
You didn't get one?
Because I always pass it to the right. Thank you.
The one you got now is, this came out of our audit report, because I know a question came up one time about on our deposit, I mean, where we put our money at. And you see I highlighted, say all funds on deposit or federal treasury accounts are fully collateralized in accordance with the requirement of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Now, remember two things. This was done by the auditor, and at the same time, I sent all of you a copy of the letter that HUD sent from that audit.
And it was well.
And so I pulled this was in page 28 and 30 and page 32. And then if you look at the next page, 32, I highlight, so that you can see that where the Housing Authority have deposited or invested the money, they're following the guidelines of required by HUD. So I just wanted to, because I know there have been many questions in reference to that. And like I said, it was in the audit report. HUD read the audit report. They sent us a letter. I sent all of you a copy of that particular letter. Any questions in reference to just this?
Yeah, well, as long as we understand, because I had asked about where you said HUD stated that the check signing should be by the executive director.
Okay. Now, the next thing, you may have...
You could stay on this.
Okay.
Understand that things have to be collateralized.
Correct.
Oh, yeah, that's stated comment.
The question was, is who is reviewing in-house those decisions on where the money is put? Because the last time I saw a document on the investments, I thought the return was significantly low. And I just, while you could put stuff in 100% collateralized, is it in 90-day notes? Is it 180-day notes? Is it one-year certificates? Who is making that decision for this organization? Who's making that decision for this organization? And then is that, we just said we just hired this financial advisor, and I'm not saying this is a role that they should have, but I want to make sure our money is working as hard as you guys are. So I get it that it's collateralized, but one, and then are we making decisions that the investments that we make are responsible investments, that we're investing in those organizations that are not in disagreement with what HUD ethics requirements are. So it wasn't so much I know what the rules are. It's what is the specificity of the money that we have, and who has decisions to put it in, who has decisions to take it out, who makes the decisions on how long we invest.
A couple of things. And I will get you further guidance. HUD only allow housing authority to invest in certain things.
I'm sorry, repeat that again.
HUD only allow housing authority to make investment in certain things. We are limited where we can invest money. We are very limited. It's not like where the city may have more flexibility. We are limited where we can put money at. And Ross probably knows more.
Well, I think Bruce brought this up several months ago, and I took a look at it because I said the same thing. I said, so I made a couple of calls just to get better acquainted, because I'm certainly not an expert in bond yields and so forth, but I will tell you what happened was a lot of that money was invested in mortgage-backed securities, which is one of the allowances that HUD allows us to invest the money in. Now, those were invested on mortgages that were paying 6 and 7%. Well, what happens is when people refinance those mortgages, it comes out of that. So the yield on those bonds is significantly lower today because of the interest rate environment. On the other side, if you look at that same statement and you look at the return on that over a 5 or 10 year period, it's much higher. I agree with Bruce is that we do need to review that, and as I may have said a few months ago, I think it would behoove us to have the company that is handling that come in and at least give a presentation to better understand that, because I think with everything else that we're dealing with from a financial management standpoint, probably something that has been overlooked, just given the makeup of that portfolio. And I'm certainly not expert level of understanding that, so it would be good for me to hear it as well. But I think that would help. But I think the biggest thing when I reviewed that policy several months ago was they're just very specific on what we can do. And I think that these aren't talking about the CDs that are in a bank. This is in a traditional bond type and government-backed security, and that's the issue. Is that
And one thing we can have is when we bring on the financial advisor, we can have them to do a presentation to the board a real thorough presentation, tell you how, what housing authority can invest the money and stuff like that, and the types of things they invest in. So that would be one, I'm making a note, that would be one of the first tasks we would ask the financial advisor to do with the board.
We're
Well,
spending,
question.
I just want to make sure, we're spending a lot of time here. We have on 2 resolutions on how we're spending our money. I've always, being a CPA and a person who does know a lot about financial investments, I wish organizations would spend as much time on how they're supposed to save their money, invest in their money, and you got both sides of the house. But, you know, we have a threshold of whether it's $50,000 here. I'm sure we got more than $50,000 in investments in this organizations, and I've never heard a nickel, I've never heard 5 seconds about how we're investing. And if we are supposedly have the fiduciary responsibility,
Yes,
I'd like
we
to know
do.
where we're putting the money. That's all.
No,
Question, go ahead, answer his. and I have a
The other
question on
thing, we do have a subcommittee within the board. You got a subcommittee, finance subcommittee, which is yourself and Commissioner Roberts. So what we can do is finance, chief financial officer can sit down with the 2 of you and go through with where everything is, and then from there, we can then do a full presentation to the board. Great.
with handouts.
That's the purpose of the subcommittee. You know, I know the 2 of you on it. If you want to add a 3rd person, I think.
We can't do that.
That's right, because then it's a meeting.
Right.
Then it's a meeting.
So I think that would be the best thing to do. And then if the subcommittee is satisfied with what we have and where it is, then we do a full presentation to the board on where everything is, so you have a better understanding.
And if they're not satisfied, we still want a presentation to the board.
That, yeah.
I mean,
I'm saying
we don't want
yeah.
just, because we're here, you know, we have a governance of 7, all the board members, and whatever is there, we need to know about it.
So we should be able to have that completed no later than, I would say, May of this year. Come out.
Yeah. Yes, aren't you able to provide the finance committee with a breakdown of the investments and where they are invested at this particular moment and what the yields are and returns are?
Yeah. Yeah, you
And
can
and
report that.
who has been advising on this? Have you been doing it in-house, or who has been providing the advice to you on where to invest? I'm curious because you mentioned about the mortgage back, what I call the secondary mortgage market, I believe is what you're referring to. And as we all know, that has gotten us in trouble in the past. So who has been advising you? Have you been getting the advice from the banks where we have the funds deposited, or in-house?
Well, what happened, Greg?
Hold up, Doc. You about to say something, Ross?
Well, I think just to keep in mind, I don't want there to be confusion. These are government backed, so these are FHA, VA, backed by the federal government. So the issues you're speaking about, that's not what these investments are. These are government backed securities. But again, they are by nature a little less yield because of the safety back.
We can only do government, we can only do government treasury type backing.
And they're all insured by the federal government.
Okay.
These are federal resources.
Okay.
Just minimize this out.
Okay.
It is something that was established before I
You got
came on
another
board,
item,
and we are
Sue?
gonna look
Well,
into it.
and the other thing too, I'm gonna give you a copy of PIH Notes 96-33. Kind of tell you basically where, to kind of give you some idea of what housing authority are governed by. I think, Ross, you ever have a copy of that, I believe.
I don't know about it. It has to be right.
One more this way, 2 more.
So, and just read that at your leisure, and maybe at the next board meeting, you may have some questions, but this is what we're governed by.
Yes, sir.
So I would, read this. But all of our money is federally insured, and where we have it at. Now, also, what I want to give you is question 1 came up in reference to the travel for commissioners for 2018, how much was spent. So I'm giving you a copy of that. For 2018, a total for travel and training for commissioners was less than $5,300 for the whole year of 2018.
Thank you, sir.
Any questions in reference to the travel for commissioners for 2018. Expense.
We get another, Ms. Brown.
If I remember correctly, the question was raised as a result of a motion to increase travel expenses for commissioners. So it was asked in relationship to a request to increase allowance for commissioners. So if, I just want to applaud the commissioners, if the total for the entire year was only $5,000, then we made a good decision not to increase. Is that correct? You agree with that?
Yeah, you did. And you know, and the Commissioner Ross Commissioner Barton had his comments were very valid. Now, but if you had all 7 commissioners going, then you would have probably exceeded that amount.
But at this point,
and because we know that every year the cost of flying go up, the cost of hotels go up, and stuff like that, it was presented as if we had all 7 commissioners traveling, you know, and that was the reason why.
We're in a good state.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Great.
And just to clarify that, I think this is accurate, but that's a budget for the entire commissioner, so it's
Correct.
not, so if I did not choose to use my 5, 6, whatever thousand, somebody else could utilize it.
Right.
Now, that wasn't my understanding, that if each commissioner has a limit and you can't give yours to somebody else. So one person can use
I think what he was saying is the
$10,000.
assumption was that, okay, if we're gonna all attend the same conference, it's gonna cost us $6,000, budget needs to be $30,000 or a little bit over.
Right.
And so at the time, again, my issue was I didn't feel good about increasing that per person, but again, with the understanding that if I chose not to go, that $6,000 is still available for the commissioner pool.
It's
just not.
I didn't understand
Okay, I
that
was
to
gonna
be
say,
a
point of
pool.
clarification on that. Each person has a budget of 6,000, that's what you all said?
5,000
5,000
per
each
year.
person, each person.
Per year.
I get that per annum, okay.
Yeah.
All right, okay.
But if you don't use it, that doesn't mean that another person, at least when we talked about it initially, and Mr. Blaine, you can clarify that because that's a different subject.
I would have to go back and look at the travel policy.
Yeah,
I don't want.
I think you're trying to increase the overall budget, again, making the assumption
That's
that
7.
all commissioners
That's
would be
7.
attending, so you wanted to have a higher threshold if everybody chose to do it.
Right. And the reason too was so that HUD know that the housing authority wasn't spending $60,000 or $70,000 a year. You know, we had something in place
Yeah.
from an audit standpoint that they could see, physically see.
Right.
That was the most important reason for that.
Okay, and I did have another question concerning the investments. How many banks locally hold the depository funds for the housing authority?
I would have to get back to you on that answer. I can provide it at the next board meeting to all the commissioners.
Okay, so you don't know who all the banks?
I would be
money
remiss
with?
in trying to give you something that's not accurate at this moment.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah. But I will be able to provide that to all the commissioners, yeah.
Okay, and I do have another question. God forbid, but suppose yourself and Ms. Winston, something happens, how would the board be able to access funds and carry on the day-to-day operations of the housing authority if something happens to the persons who sign the checks, the two of you? I'm just very curious as to what the continuity of management is if something like that happens.
It's actually 4 of us who sign checks. So in addition to Mr. Lane and myself, you have Shannon, and you also have the owners.
4 of you can sign on the check.
4 can. Yeah, 4. We don't all 4 at the same time. It only requires 2 signatures.
Right, requires 2.
So we have, enough
Well,
coverage.
then the question becomes if something happens to all 4 of you all. I mean, no, seriously, you're laughing, but it has been known to happen. And that's why they have something called key man insurance. And you have to have depth of management and continuity of operations So, and I think my fellow commissioners know why I'm posing this question, but we don't have an answer for that. If something happens to all 4 of you who sign checks, what is the access for the authority, the commissioners, to get access to the accounts, to the checking accounts for the day-to-day operations? And I'm pretty sure we don't have an answer.
Well, yeah, I do have an answer for you.
What's your answer?
Where we have our money at, the banks had to sign a form that say that HUD have authorization for those funds. If the 4 of us would something, God forbid, happen to us, HUD had the ability to get to all the funds that all housing authority had deposited wherever. There's a form that all banks must. Only way we can deposit money in any bank is they have to sign off on a form giving HUD the authority at any time to go in to see what those to be able to get possession of those funds. And they have that in place in case there is some
disaster.
Well, not mainly disaster. If there's abuse of money, HUD had the right to come in and pull those funds. Right. And there's a form that all banks had to sign in order for housing authority to put the money there.
I'm talking about for check writing.
Well, same thing.
Because at the moment, if I'm hearing you correctly, check writing is among the 4 staff members. Is that correct?
Well, you got to have 2 signatures on the check.
Right, I understand.
I understand the question. I think the answer is that the board would probably appoint a new acting executive director, and they also have the ability to give specific powers to whether it be the chair, the vice chair, because they're considered officers of the authority. But I think that's what we do.
And it's tied to the position, not the person.
Yeah, right.
So
No, I
you can
understand
appoint
that.
another deputy or,
Right.
and that person would have
Just
access. So we don't have names, it's just a position.
No, I understand that.
And it might be a good idea to create like a succession plan, because I sit on the Stop Inc. board of directors as well, and they do have a succession plan, which just kind of outlines if something were to happen like that. Just a suggestion with part of the policy.
Thank you, Councilman. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay.
That's it
Now,
for me.
the other piece is, I know a question came up reference to check signing, and I think I don't know whether you board members got this or not. I sent you a package. But anyway,
I didn't get that.
it was mailed out to everybody. But anyway, what in there, I pulled in there and I highlighted, for example, there was a letter on May the 1st that came from U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development to this housing authority in reference to check sign and practice should conform with proper internal controls. And mainly it was because at that particular time, they felt that by the board chair being able to sign checks, it was too much in the day-to-day operation. Now, so to ask the housing authority to put together a plan. On May the 30th of 2017, there was a board resolution done. A resolution adopting the Portsmouth Redevelopment Housing Authority internal control policy. And that went to HUD along with and its copy of this was put in the mail to you along with the internal control.
When was this done?
In 2017.
Oh, this is, let's see, that's before I got here.
That-
It'd been nice if you had sent that to me.
Well, I did.
You should have got it in the mailbox.
No, I
Mine-
didn't.
Mine came today, like in the mailbox, so you probably got it today.
Oh, it came today, of the day of the meeting? Okay.
I put-
No, when I checked my mail, I didn't have it.
Now, on this internal control, there was 4 positions put on there. It was the Deputy Executive Director, Director of Budget, Director of Procurement, and Director of Finance. And then on June the 1st of 2017, a letter was sent to Dr. Lambert, who was the HUD field rep in Richmond, in reference to the plan. On June the 26th, Dr. Lambert sent a letter back to the Housing Authority. We are encouraged by the change that have been implemented by the Housing Authority, satisfied with significant improved board appointments to the Commission of the Aged, and satisfied with all response provided by the Housing Authority to close out our concerns.
Okay, let me respond. Only on this level. If you mailed this package I don't know, yesterday?
No, it was mailed out, to give you the exact date when it was mailed.
Okay, Chairman, you said you got yours today?
I got mine today.
Today of the meeting. In those cases like that, I would ask that you also have copies available for us here, because I haven't gotten mine.
Well, if you remember, you asked for it on Tuesday, March the 19th.
I did.
Which was 2 days ago.
I did.
Right.
So I'm just saying, because see, you're doing a lot of referencing to that information.
But just a second copy for you.
Yeah, you're giving it to me now, but obviously I haven't had a chance to read through it and respond. So I'm just saying, if you know one of your packages is going to be coming out late or coming out in a way where it may be arriving on the day of the meeting, and some commissioners may not have received it, it would just be good to also include it in the 3-ring binder so that we can have it. Because obviously I can't respond because I haven't seen it.
And the other piece I have is, you mentioned, and maybe this would be for the, when we have the joint session with the council. You got two, it's two copies of the, it's two copies of the corporate agreement. One was done in 1940, and then there was an update done in 1956. So you have those two, but you can read those, and that would be whenever we have a joint meeting with the city, somewhere in the future, looking at
Was this part of what was mailed out too, or is this something you just giving us now?
I'm giving that to you now.
Then I'll hold my comments for those. 40 and 156.
The only other thing I have is that
any comments on the changes in the two? You give us two.
One was for 40, and the other one it was update done in 1956.
Other than that, the content, anything different? Did you have a chance to review it?
I reviewed it, and there were some changes. Yeah, but I just think today may not want to discuss them today. Give you a chance to read them, and maybe at a later date. But I gave those to you because you mentioned earlier that's one of the things you wanted when you had the joint meeting with the city again to talk about that. That's the reason why I'm handing them to you now so you can kind of get familiar with them. And the vice mayor got a copy, and she probably passed those on to her peers and things like that.
Shared the 1940 document, but now.
Yeah, 56.
And can our attorney, before that joint meeting, provide like a summarization white paper for each of us and to compare it?
Compare the
bullets?
two?
Yes, it would be very helpful.
Yeah, that's, because I'm going to read it too, but if that would be, I didn't even think of that, that would be great and helpful, so we can add some comments and possibly, give our concerns in advance to the vice mayor so that the council doesn't feel like we're trying to shoot them in the foot.
Catch them off guard.
Catch them off guard.
Yeah.
Or, trying to make points.
Yeah, we don't want to
So,
catch them off guard.
I mean, collaboration is collaboration.
It is.
That's really important to me. I'm not interested in embarrassing anybody.
Right.
Two other things, and then I'm going to be finished. We get staff. We get quite a few emails from the board members, and sometimes when we get those, we are and we do respond to them. But sometimes we at the same time sometimes the response may want back in one day or the next day. But sometimes staff is also tied up doing what I call the priority stuff, which is our first priority is to HUD and to other things like we're doing for development and stuff like that. It will help us, and I'm just speaking for the staff and talk, it will help us that maybe if you want something, if you could either chair it through the chair, and then the chair can pass it to the various committees within the board to determine if that's something that we need to respond to. And then the committee can either refer it back to the chair to give to the ED to make sure we get that information to you. I think that will help us in-house as a staff, because we do get several requests for emails on stuff and stuff like that. And then we, at the same time, when we stop doing what we're doing, because we feel like if we don't respond immediately, we don't know what the repercussions may be. And so we had this something I stopped doing what we're doing at that moment on some of these issues. And sometimes if it, like I said, if it goes through your proper protocol within your body, I think that would help us.
Okay, let me respond.
Okay.
Executive Director Bland, if I send something to you, and we've had this conversation, I will copy the chairman on it. And I'm not the type of commissioner where if you don't respond to me the first day, second day, I'm going to have a problem with it. That's not who I am. I can wait patiently until you're able to respond. But it's a two-pronged system because we are all commissioners. And as long as we keep Chairperson Smith in the loop, that is the most important thing. But I don't want you to feel that you can just wait until you get instructions from Chairperson Smith whether or not you should respond. That is not how your role is defined in your employment contract. So as commissioners, and each commissioner can, have their say on it. But for Commissioner Jiggets, when I send something to you, I certainly will copy Chairperson Smith on it. And I'm not the type of person who's going to do, I need to have this in 2 days. That's not who I am. I can wait. I can patiently wait. But it's unfair to the commissioners to just have us go through Chairman Smith to turn around and go through you. This is the day of email communication, so we'll send what we need to you, and we'll copy the chairman on it. That's no problem. And that's from my personal perspective.
So, just for point of clarification, I thought you said it was regarding staff members. We aren't to send anything directly to staff. I mean, I think we've never sent anything. At least I know I've never sent anything directly to the staff without.
No.
I don't think I ever sent anything to the staff.
Neither would I. I don't send to the staff. I send it
to the chair.
The executive director.
Okay.
And I hope that's what all the commissioners do. They should not
we
do.
We can't.
No, you're not supposed to. And I'm new, but I know not to do that.
Okay.
I've never done that.
If it's okay, I might make a suggestion, because I think what you're referring to is maybe the questions being asked requires the staff to respond. Would it be acceptable if we were to send emails and then expect maybe the answers to be at the next board meeting? Or if I sent you a question yesterday, obviously I may not expect it to be answered today. But would that be a better, so it could be?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. I don't know if that's acceptable to you, but
I'm confused on what you're asking.
Me too.
I understand that the concern is, and I don't disagree with your sentiment. As a commissioner, we want to be able to ask questions and have those questions answered. I don't disagree with that. I think if I'm understanding correctly, the question is the timing of those responses and so forth. So my suggestion is that if we send those questions to Mr. Bland, that maybe the time to address the answers to those would be at the following board meeting.
Well, sometimes that may not be possible.
Well, I understand that, and maybe we just leave it to the discretion. But if you haven't gotten a response, then I think it would be reasonable to say, if he were to say, well, I can answer this in a few days, or maybe I need till the next board meeting. Just something so we're not trying to take away the time, and the questions are certainly legitimate, but it's not. And I understand that, because I know in my profession, if I get a call from a director, I'm like, well, man, I got to respond today and tomorrow, and sometimes that may not be what they're expecting. So that might be a.
Now, I'm not as savvy with emails, but I usually put your name or David's name on my responses. And if I've had trouble with my email, and if someone's gotten something from me with your name or David's name on it, please accept my apologies. It wasn't meant for you. You know, if you read anything from me, you know, they have a disclaimer at the bottom of it. Maybe I need to put that disclaimer. If this doesn't respond to you, please don't answer me. But usually, I think traditionally, I can say always, send it to between you guys.
Copy to the chair, yeah.
Yeah, and people don't likewise, so.
But I you know.
But that's for the staff to protect us, to protect the staff. We can't talk
Well,
to the staff.
I don't interact with the staff, and I haven't sent any email saying I need you to respond by X and X date. That's just not me. And I could say that I have some things that haven't been responded to yet, but that's okay. I can wait. I can patiently wait because I understand that you're running day-to-day operations, you know. So I don't know if any of the other commissioners have said if you can respond by close of business or something. Now, I know staff has asked us to respond by close of business on some things.
Yeah.
But
That's-
not the other way
that's
around,
simple.
no.
That's simple stuff.
No. So,
No problem.
yeah.
But it's point of clarification, that's
The
all.
last thing I have is the secretary sent out a Google to the board members in reference to the board meeting, and most of you did.
Oh, the
respond.
survey.
Yeah, the survey. In reference, I think it was 3 different times on there. If people was, you know, interested, and I think it was 9:30 board meeting, or I think it might have been a
It was
3
three
o'clock
different
board meeting
choices.
or 5 o'clock board meeting.
It's 3 different choices.
Did you?
That went out.
Yeah, I did.
We
I
did-
was slow in doing that, I know it, because I wanted on it somewhere suggested times. It only gave us 3 choices. I like to,
Well, would you say if everyone can agree on the same time, we need to stick with what we have? Or what is it?
that wasn't part of the survey, which is.
No, I know
A,
it
B, or
wasn't,
C.
but what are you all's thoughts? I mean,
I
did y'all get
responded.
it? Did y'all get it? Everybody didn't get it. Everybody didn't get the
By the
survey.
time I got it, I think 6 people had answered. So
I had.
I think it got to pretty
And,
much
yeah,
everybody.
did
Can I
you,
give you mine?
oh, okay.
It was a survey monkey.
Yeah, those.
We can.
Vice Chair, did you get it?
Oh, I didn't. I
What's
didn't
the big
check.
deal about it? I mean, we could have crossed the piece of paper out in here. and
But not
done
to
that.
mention our liaison, Vice Mayor, did you, I mean,
Oh,
because.
well, I wouldn't vote in on that,
Yeah,
but
but you
you
need
would
to
just
know.
notify
Do,
me
because
of
if
the
it
time.
doesn't-
Yeah.
But you still need
conflicts
to
with
know.
your time.
Yeah, well,
That's
it
a
does
problem.
not-
The survey monkey basically hit 3 times. It hit 9:30 a.m. on a Thursday morning, or you said 3 p.m. There was another one. I think it was 4.
5 o'clock.
It was 3
It was
different
3.
choices, I
It was
think.
3. 9:30, 3:30, 3 o'clock.
1:30.
1:30.
1:30.
Something like
It was
And
yeah.
then
Okay, so
5.
9:30, 1:30, and then 5.
And now I'm ready to change what I responded. I think I put responded 9:30 now.
To change our meeting time.
Now, that was when I met with the governance committee. The governance committee
Isn't that you?
asked to put out a survey just to get a feel back. The governance committee, you have two commissioners of the governance committee, who was Commissioner
Okay.
Morgan
I don't have a
and Commissioner
problem with
Smith.
it.
And just want to get
The
feedback.
question came up because I think, when I served on the board previously, it was a noon meeting,
Yes.
lunchtime meeting.
Yes.
And then I guess some other time it was moved to 7,
Mm-hmm.
then it back down
Yeah,
to
you
5.
got
And
that, 5,
I
yeah.
think the question was because all of our staff is here and they have to stay here, if we moved it to a different point in the day, maybe we're not taking into personal time, which I was in favor of.
Yeah, and
So which time
I
you
was,
available?
I was kind of thinking,
I myself chose 9:30.
disrupt their workday
I'm
if they, we sit in a meeting, you gotta do your work. I mean, I know this is work, but
But
I don't want to
it's
disrupt the workday. That's what I wanted to be able to put on the, in the
Well,
comment section.
You have, within this region, I use this region here, you got some, I think it was 2 housing authorities, they had their board meeting at 8:30 in the morning.
Where I came from, it was
Newport News.
8:30.
There's 8:30. So there's no,
Most of them are in the morning during the day. Most of them are not in the evening.
Vice Mayor, when you served
time was
EDA,
yours in
I was
Newport
in-
News?
We were 8 o'clock in
Board
the
meetings
morning.
for the housing
Yes.
And I was on planning.
And planning was 12.
Yes.
so
either
some, they
those
have
times.
various different times. That was just a suggestion of the governing committee, just to get a feel if,
Yeah.
because there's no set time that HUD require it's what's most convenient for the majority of the board members. That's what, like I said, you got a couple of housing authorities already have theirs at 8:30 in the morning. I think one have a noon meeting. So, it's up to, we're here to, as staff, to comply with whatever time, you as board members want. But the governance committee did ask us to send that out, and we did. And we got back, I think, 4 responses or 5 responses came back at this time,
Well, the big question about that was, how can we best serve the people we serve? What time would it be available for the people that we serve and other community leaders who would want to participate?
Perfectly fair question. I think that, again, I know up until probably 3, 4, or 5 years ago, it had been noon for 20 years. So I don't think that was the thing. And I don't know, but what really does it is that all of these now are taped. So I think it serves better, no matter what time it is, that the residents have the ability to go back and view these things. And
most are technology savvy and got YouTube. Recommendation that I know you only got a certain number of votes, and you still waiting on. I believe it's Commissioner Chapman that needs to vote, and on the survey thing. My recommendation is this: I'm keep hearing lunch. Let's have the secretary to send out another survey monkey, and let's put out the 12 noon and the other time. Let's see what we get.
Okay, all right. Well, it's also interesting, before I took this appointment, I was like, 5 o'clock meeting? No, I'm a morning person. But now, now I've sort of gotten used to this 5 o'clock meeting slot. And I think I voted 9:30, but I've changed my mind since. So I think that's great.
It's going to be a lunch meeting. We can't have it 2.5 hours.
3 hours, right.
Somebody's got to control the agenda.
Right.
Somebody's got to control the agenda.
And
I mean, that's why we moved to 5, because we were here.
Oh, is that why we moved to 5?
Right.
We were here till 9:30 every night. So it seems like the time changed, but the length of the meeting didn't change. So
Right.
Noon.
I think we are,
So what are you saying?
I'm locked into this time
I'm just
in my
saying that if
schedule.
whatever time we do, we just got to keep it.
But we don't want to heighten
Respect people's
irritation or people having to walk out of the meeting because of other obligations, and I have other obligations during the day. And so, and when people, if we do it at a noon time and people aren't here mentally, I think we are on a good road. We're doing good things. It's taking some time for us to get here. I don't want to disrupt that process.
And I still ask Vice Mayor, do you have other things on that particular Thursday?
The third Thursday at 5 is
Dedicated.
a good time, but I'm flexible with that time because I don't have any other commitments during that third Thursday. Yes, I mean it's going to stay on third Thursday.
That's right.
Right.
And you just may want to think about it for the next board meeting, give it further thought. I would just, the governance committee just asked me to send it out, just get feedback from you as board members in reference to that.
All right, and for the sake of time, because I do respect your time, commissioners, we can move to the next thing so we can keep going and keep moving, because I do respect your time. Mr. Blaine, anything else?
No, that's it. That's all I have.
Commissioners. I'm just moving through the agenda, trying to get us going.
Oh, you moving along, okay.
Moving along. Commissioner.
I've got 4 items. We didn't have a financial report today, and we had kind of said that we were going to have, the reports, because of the length of reports, we're going to try and give them on a quarterly or every other meeting, which I appreciate.
Yeah.
But being a CPA and being very concerned about financials, this is the most important time for the financial folks to be not bothered, I guess. I don't want to use that word, flippantly, but we've had 2 significant things happen. We just changed auditors, which means the new auditors are putting much more pressure, much more questions on the financial staff than they've had in 20-something years that we had new financial folks. And I know there's a lot of us who are new commissioners who are asking a lot of financial questions. I appreciate appreciate, Mr. Bland, you saying we're gonna have the investment stuff next month. And all of a sudden I started cringing because we must get tax returns in, we must get the audit report in, we've got to train auditors. And that was the only area in our when we had the review by HUD that we got a perfect score was in financials. And I guess I'm asking all of us, and I'm asking Mr. Bland too, whatever resources that we need to give Shannon and her staff, it's got to be to bear to get us where we need to be. I voiced it last time that I thought there's a lot of work being put on them, a lot of pressure being put on them. We've had a couple of movements and people there. Losing Scott and Shannon coming in has been a smooth transition, but it's not an easy transition. All right. So I guess I'm asking you, Mr. Bland, what if there's a time frame that we need to focus and give as much support to financial? Right now is the time, and those of us have got to take a step back and say, I know we need answers about this and this and this, but we've got to give them the time and the respect of what they're going to. I really, as you all well know, I'm a big fan of what we do financially. We get the answers that we get. Sometimes we don't like the answers that we get, but those are the answers. So I want to applaud Shannon and her staff. The other thing is, I always want to rah-rah what the organization is doing. And we've talked about before about our website or Facebook or press, the press releases. But we have two great things going on. We have a great project going on at Lexington, and now this $100,000 worth of carpet, that's a big deal. And I don't know how we get that out there. But those are two, and that's what I'm seeing. Those are two great things we're doing. We get enough about all the other stuff that we're doing that maybe we should have paid more attention to. But we have good things like that. We need to somehow get it to, whether it be vice mayor or whoever it is. Let's go out there and say, hey, the organization is doing great stuff. Third one, we just had a change in the. They're still going on. Still a lot of. Changes going on with the new interim police chief. I want to make sure that the organization is being proactive with Chief Green and either inviting them or you going over there, takes a box of cookies, whatever you want to take them, and make sure that we're keeping the positive face of the PRHA in front of the new police chief, because I don't want to lose any momentum that we've been getting with police. The last one, I know we did a 5-year annual plan, the annual plan that we send to HUD. And one of the things that we don't do, and I'm making the recommendations as commissioners, we don't kind of put out, hey, what are our priorities? What would we as commissioners like to see of the organization? And I'm going to put up there, I'd like this year to be year of the employees, and if there's any way possible that we can look at a pay raise for the employees this year, I think it would do a lot for the morale. We've cut a lot of people back. We're shifting people around because of the projects. We've had some great successes, and while the bonuses we've done consistently for the last couple of years are good, we really, and I'm not saying, hey, I have the magic answer for you. This is where it's got to come from. But we need to have some sort of carrot out there to tell employees, hey, we recognize you've worked hard, and if it can't be a pay raise, then come up with some sort of employee recognition program. Every major organization I go to, you see a wall outside of an employee of the month, employee of the quarter, employee of the year, or whatever. The Christmas banquet, bring a couple people up and give them something. If it needs funding, hey, talk to us about the funding. But really, we really see 2019 be year of the PRHA employee. That's all I got. Thanks, sir.
You going around this way? Is that how you're doing it? And well, I'm at a disadvantage on what you just said, Commissioner Lalonde, in terms of the employee salaries, because obviously haven't been given any information that shows what their earning structure is. So I would be very interested in seeing that. Being the newest commissioner, Mr. Bland, I do appreciate that you provided me a hard copy of the audit report, and it is definitely a page turner, 100 pages, and I have not reached out to you with any questions, have I? No, I didn't. Not. What I did, I sent an email and said I would like to sit down and meet with you, and of course you haven't gotten back to me on it, but I'm not pressed on that because I would hope by, say, April we can have that meeting. I'm halfway through the report,
Ooh.
but it is very interesting, and I have to say, based on what I read so far, the CPA firm has been very thorough. Of course, I don't know all of the particulars of why you all wanted to switch. I'm not going to try to play Monday morning quarterback on it, but I am going through it. I take this very seriously, and it has given me a lot of information. So when we finally do sit down, it will be at your convenience with your schedule.
I would like to say that when I sat down, I would like to have at least one person from the finance
That's
committee
fine with me. I was
as a
hoping you
part of-
would say that. So
because-
whatever, you know, but I'm not pressing
Rita.
or saying.
Thanks, Rita.
You know, I'm the new kid. I'm the baby. So
This was for fresh
I
eyes.
expect to be pampered. You know.
100 pages.
Yeah, it's 100 pages. And Mr. Bland referred me first to the website. And then he responded, "Would you like a hard copy?" Before I even knew it was 100 pages, I said, "Please." I'm so certainly glad I said I wanted a hard copy, 100 pages on the website. No, I don't think
Yeah,
so,
we
but
keep it
thank
on.
you.
We keep it on our website.
Yeah, that, I'm
Everybody
sure
can
you
look at it.
too.
Yeah, so
I
everybody
don't
can
want
look
my
at it.
computer, my iPhone to crash, but anyway, thank you.
Mhm.
The other thing I wanted to say, and this might be on the website, and that, because you know the Census 2020 is right nipping on our heels. I see where the city has started their initiative, and I wanted to know, what has the Housing Authority done? How does that work with the residents in terms of filling out the census? Is it an individual census that is provided to each household?
It is.
And have we put that on our website to get our residents census ready for 2020? And if not, if you would, please.
Well, I'm going to explain to you.
Okay.
The reason why, with technology today, that lead is taken by the city, and we don't want to confuse the process. They do a very thorough job educating the residents in the city of Portsmouth how to do that. And for us to come in and try to augment that, we would be doing more damage than good.
Okay,
It's best for them to hear
clarification.
from one
Okay.
agency. This way, they're not saying, well, the Housing Authority said this.
Yeah, buddy.
Right.
And
So-
we do have, the city
The
is
committee.
coming up with a complete count
Committee.
And they're asking for people from PRHA, from the religious
That's why I was
community,
into.
from the civic leagues, and we can, if anyone is interested in being a person, because we have identified some areas that were low count areas where they were slow in returning them. And actually, surprisingly, I mean, good kudos, it was not the public housing areas
great.
that were lagged. It was actually, I think, Port Norfolk and one other area, I forgot what it was, but it was not the public housing. So if anybody is interested in serving on the complete count committee, then let me know. We're taking names or suggestions of persons from the religious community, the civic league, the Portsmouth Redevelopment Housing Authority. You can
Okay.
appoint somebody, or if you know somebody who might have a passion for that, then we can do that.
Mr. Bland, are you planning to serve on that complete count committee?
No, no. probably
Are you
won't be
planning
the,
to designate someone from the Housing Authority to be on it?
I think you would be great.
It might be a conflict, so I'm gonna have to say no.
Okay.
But
You're very passionate
Why
about
would
it.
it be a conflict?
I'm always passionate about making sure each person is counted. But when you said, oh, who said it? Did you say it? That there might be, that we don't want to interfere with what the city is doing.
Oh, no, he was saying as far
He
as
was saying-
PRHA
They
putting
take the
something on a
lead.
website to announce
City takes
it,
the
you
lead.
know, or any of
So
that
you
stuff.
don't even want it on the website for the residents? to-
Well, you could
just
probably
to-
say it's coming and.
Yeah, that's
just,
what
you
I was
know,
saying about,
yeah,
just
put it
something
out.
that said, remember that when you receive your 2020 census survey, respond and mail it in. That's what I was talking
Well, the
about.
complete count committee will probably get together and come up with some flyers or some kind
For
of
the
marketing
residents.
to do that. And then at
Okay,
that point, we would
okay.
distribute it to the civic leagues and the churches and
To the
public
public housing residents.
Yes, and then they
Okay.
can
And then
just
that
post
would be
it
the same
wherever they
information we'll put
post
on our
notices.
website. We'll
Right.
put that same
No, I'm saying,
information
you
on
are gonna put it on your website.
Yeah, whatever
Oh,
the
okay,
city
that's
sends
what
out.
After
they,
the complete count committee comes up with it.
Yeah.
As long as it gets on the website, because it's so important.
It is.
So important, and obviously, the population being moved around from Lexington, Lincoln Park, that could impact on the population count too, because many of those residents may not be retained in Portsmouth. They may be moving to other cities, and see, all of those things will become part of the final census justification as to the reasons why you've had the decline in the population. Okay, I got one more thing.
Hey, Ms. Jacobs.
Okay, this is the last thing. And that's the only thing was, don't you start. The only thing was, and I had individual conversations with the commissioners, some of you, about your thoughts for purchasing an additional table for the State of the City address, so that we could have a table for the commissioners and then a table for those individuals, residents from the resident community. And I wanted to know what the commissioner's thoughts. Well, I know what the chairperson's thought is, but I'm interested in knowing what the rest of the commissioner's thought is. I thought it was a good idea because we need to seize on the opportunities to engage our residents as much as possible. And so many of them probably have never been to a State of the City address by the mayor. So that's why I wanted to know what is everyone else's opinion on it, starting from my right, Bruce.
If the funds are there, I always want to get people State of the City.
Say that again?
If the funds are there. Yeah.
Okay. Ross?
I guess first, same thing, if there's money, that's one thing. My concern is what you do to, how you open it up to
So
10 seats
who gets to
to,
come?
I don't know how many residents we have, but you're gonna have somebody who said, well, I didn't get it in enough time, and I just think we're, and I respect what you're saying, but again, I would say that technology is such that it's broadcast on TV, so maybe they can't be there live, but I think we open up a can of worms as to why these 10 people were chosen, or why, it's just very tough to regulate, but I appreciate the sentiment.
Rita?
It's fine. No, I have been to the State of the City the last 2 years, and we have also enjoyed being with some of the staff. If it could be worked out in some sort of, I think lottery gives people a bad taste in their mouth when it comes to housing. So, it's just, it's a matter of the cost.
I know you're going to weigh in. This is what I wanted to say, because I had a conversation, I think, with one of you all about, I think each residential community, they have a representative. Is that correct? So my thinking was that whoever
we try to, all of them don't.
Okay, well,
they're in the process of reorganizing.
Okay, well, that the representative for the various, like for Seaboard, Hamilton Place, the representative, they would get the invite. That was my thought on it.
I do think of cost, but I don't have any objections to them being there if it fits their schedule. I'm okay with it.
Okay, well, it's not cost prohibitive, because if it was, the commissioners having a table, we would not have a table.
I'm not against it.
Yeah.
I'm just quoting what the money people talk about.
Okay. Well, can we afford it?
I just see some factor in that. I don't have any objections.
Whose is it? It's Mr. Bland and the agency's decision. We don't make all those decisions.
So I'm good with it.
Commissioner Jacobs.
I'm sorry.
You wanted her response?
Well, I had gotten it before the meeting, but I'll take the formal.
Well, I'm a resident commissioner anyway, so you will have a resident there.
Okay, right.
And the person
Right.
myself.
Oh, no, I know,
Right.
I know that, but I was saying to fill up an additional table with other resident representatives that don't sit on the board, was my thinking on it. So do I need to put it in a formal motion, or what do I need to say if we can find the funds? can we have an additional table? Should I ask you, Mr. Bland, to ask staff if they think it is workable? Because I don't want to interfere with day-to-day operations.
Well, let me just say, I will reach out to Ms. Adams, deal with the tenants on the social service issue. I will reach out to her and see what her feelings is, because she have more of a pulse on what interest the residents have.
Yeah.
They may share some interest in doing that, or they may not, because
Okay, that's
her
fair.
department work very closely with the residents in the various communities. So, and Delois is here now, and she may not be responding at this moment, but it's something we can think about. But I know it's coming up soon.
It's coming up
Well,
April the 5th.
It's a good point, though, and Vice Chairman brings up a good point. There's a reason why we have residents on this board, is to be the voice of the residents.
Correct.
It's why we have a resident advisory board,
Maybe we can
is
take
for
it
them
from
to
the
speak for the residents. So to have to fill a table when you already have representatives just brings up a point. Isn't that what those folks are supposed to be doing?
Yeah.
All right. Now,
And
if
they
we're
may have to
questioning about, it's not our role. That's between you, Mr. Bland, and the chairman to figure out, is the word getting down to the residents. So it brings up a good discussion.
Okay.
Well, it's a good discussion, and you mentioned something about a resident advisory board. How many people are on that?
5.
We have 11.
11. Okay, well, certainly, Mr. Bland, if you can discuss it further, and if you all see a way to add an additional table. Time is approaching, but I think there will be residents who will want to attend to hear our mayor speak. And so that's it for me. Ruben?
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chair?
Before that,
No, we got to go on public.
say what I need to say and get y'all out of here. First of all, I appreciate your time as always.
Yes, I did have a few comments, if you're not going to close it.
No, I ain't gonna, go ahead, come on.
Okay. One, the carpenter agreement, and I thank you for the current one. That's a big plus. Also, I'd like to recommend that we put the information, if it's still available, for the Westbury Homeowners Association, for the painting agreement on our webpage.
It's been on the webpage from all the way from 20, when we first put it out there.
It's up there? I didn't,
It's
okay.
been, it's been
Great.
up there probably for
Great.
the last 12 months or longer. Yeah.
And I'd like to make the recommendation that we get on the webpage what we do. And I like to support him, the good things that we are doing for our residents. And the last thing is, well, next to the last thing is.
Take your time.
Thank you. There's a statement in the pilot online that says a particular housing authority that city has already launched a People's First initiative, which is designed to provide residents in public housing with not only new housing options, but other forms of personal assistance to put them on the path of economic sufficiency. And it was in an article on the Pilot Online, and they gave us a little slight praise about our commission and what we're doing in the Portsmouth. And a little bit is better than nothing, but I really appreciated the article. And they said some very interesting things. So I'd like to just say that economic sufficiency for our residents is absolutely the direction where we are headed, and I think where we want to continue to go. So, and the only other thing that we should list on the page is our scholarship program and the people that receive our scholarships. That's one of the things that pushes people to economic sufficiency, and we should put that up on our webpage, the recipients.
If they say that
It's
it's
under the
okay.
residence section. And the applications, they download the applications from the website.
Right.
It's on the application, it's
but I haven't seen
You have a
the
residence
names,
section?
the
They may
people
not
who
want
received
their
the
names.
scholarships.
They may not want their names.
So when they receive our money, if they want our money, they don't get the option to choose.
No, that's not,
Scholarship, who
that's
doesn't
rude.
want their name
They
announced.
get that money, this is economic sufficiency.
Yeah.
Okay, we could fix, that's not a challenge. This is, okay. You can sign the paper to get this check, to get made public.
And thank you again, Chairman, for sending that link on the article, because sometimes the pilot online will carry our article, but it doesn't make it into the hard copy
Gotcha.
paper.
Again, I commend you all for what you do. Time is one thing you can't get back. You can make more money, you can't get more time back. But I piggyback off Commissioner Lalonde, how he said, let's get in and be about. We do have questions, don't get me wrong, and some things we do need to table that we may have to do a one-on-one and sit down. So for everybody to sit at this table, you know, like you said, respective of each one's time. We have other organizations, you know this, you're a Delta, you're AK, I'm Omega.
I did not black, don't put me on blast.
It's okay, you shouldn't be ashamed, you got the letters. But anyway, just speaking to that time is everything. Let's stick to the business of things. I want to commend the staff. Mr. Blandford, great job. Great job, Deputy Director Winston. The article was incredible just to see. And you're a great writer, Anna. You're a great writer. Okay, you're on TV, you're a great writer. And what I love.
What you doing?
Hold on, I ain't brown, being me. I'm being me. Being me. Am I being me? Being me. So it's how Portsmouth is quietly but dramatically reshaping this public housing. And what the beautiful thing that they said when they were doing the article is how we do things uniquely. So I want to consider us the first housing authority in the state of Virginia. Number one. Here's the thing. I consider us the Ingenuity Housing Authority. How we take little and we do amazing things, right, Ross? We ain't got the big one like Richmond. We ain't got the big one like Norfolk, but we do amazing things here at the Housing Authority. I commend you all for bringing your expertise and your sacrifice to this board. Let's continue to grow. Let's continue to thrive. Let's continue to build the city. You know, I've been working with you for a long time now, Vice Mayor. Over a decade. Yes, ma'am. Yes. So, and you all respectively done your great work within the city. And the city, I'm pretty sure, I'm not speaking for the city, but I'm just speaking as a resident. Thank you. Let's keep building. Let's keep growing, y'all, and let's keep going. Now, I have to say, public speakers, PRHA allows up to 5 minutes to speak. Any public speakers present? Have it done? All right. We'll keep it moving. I'm going to read the resolution to meet a closed session.
With a minute break for bathroom break.
Yes, sir. You go ahead and take a break. You read the resolution first.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, resolution 2019-13, resolution of intent to meet in closed meeting, whereas the Virginia Free Commission Act provides that the Board of Commissioners can meet in a closed meeting for the discussion or consideration of the disposition of publicly held real property where discussed in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiate the strategy of the public body set forth in section 2.2-37A3 of the Code of Virginia as amended. The matters for discussion of 900 County Street and Frederick Boulevard and Turnpike. Now, therefore, be it resolved that in compliance with the Virginia Freedom of Information Act and the above referenced section of Virginia Code, the Board of Commissioners shall reconvene in a closed meeting on March 21st, 2019 for the discussion of the disposition of publicly held real property, A3.